Hey everyone, welcome to Hump Day. I am so excited because I get to see my two best pals. That's one great thing. But another great thing is that it is Hump Day Happy Hour with Dentist in the Know. This is your backstage pass for current trends, politics, and education in the dental world. It is live and it is over a cocktail. Tonight I'm having a lovely red. I'm pretty excited about that. Really have cut back on my wine drinking and actually all my drinking. And while many of you may not believe that I've actually done that, I have, and actually feel pretty good. But when I'm hanging out with my besties and geeking out and talking dentistry, nothing I enjoy more than having a glass of wine or favorite beverage and just bringing out what's happening in dentistry. So, as you know, I am co-hosted by some of my best friends in the industry, Dr. Chad Duplantis and Dr. Jennifer Bell. We are all dentists, we are all business owners, and we are all educators. And collectively, our job is to bring all of you in the know. So first of all, thanks to Pearl, who is a sponsor of tonight's program, and our guest, Dr. Elliot Rand, who's going to be talking about artificial intelligence and how this is affecting not just our industry, but all kinds of industries around the world right now. And second, hello to my amigos, Chad and JB. How are y'all tonight? Cheers.
Hey everybody, how you doing?
How you doing?
How you doing?
How you
I'm
doing?
about to sign off YouTube. I'm leaving again
Hey,
for like the 37th.
by the way, I have to throw something out there since we always talk about this. Our guest said he's from Parsippany, New Jersey. Do you know who else is from Parsippany, New Jersey?
I have no idea. I don't even know where that is, except
I know where it is
from me.
Yeah, but who else is from Well, he didn't say Parsippany. He said Northwest New Jersey. But who else is from Parsippany?
I don't know who's from.
And I'm just going to tell you that now he lives in Reseda with his ma.
With his ma.
With his ma.
It's not Marty Jablow.
No, man.
Who?
Daniel LaRusso, baby.
Oh, really? With his
Daniel LaRusso. Where did you come here from? Parsippany, and they're in Reseda with the mom.
That's the
Come
mom.
on.
All right, I missed that one, guy. It's really rare that you stump me like that.
Yeah, I'm gonna unplug your microphone.
Do you even know who Daniel LaRusso is, Jennifer?
No.
Jeez, Pete the Karate Kid. Come on.
Oh yeah. Why didn't you say the Karate Kid?
Because it's well, obviously you haven't been keeping up with Cobra Kai. Come on.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the Karate Kid,
one of us has to run this company. I don't have time to do it all.
Right. Speaking of the Karate Kid, actually, it's funny that you brought that up because I was at the COIS annual symposium where you were sorely missed, Jennifer, and Chad. You need to be there. Yeah, I said it. You heard it. That just happened.
On record.
Yeah, on record.
By the way, Dr. Pamela and I are actually looking at which course we're going to go take.
Good. Well, I'm happy to hear that. So anyway, at the COIS annual symposium, it was really cool because Marta Ravilla Leon, who does everything digital. Honestly, everything digital there was unbelievable this year. So easy to digest and just so well laid out. But anyway, they were showing, how you could take your wax off and put your wax back on the model. And it was, they actually stood on stage and they're like, wax on, wax off, wax on, wax off. So perfect reference. On another note, I had two things interesting happen this week. I'd love to hear your perspectives on. One is, I was supposed to move into my new building today, like moving truck and everything scheduled for today to actually pick up my dental equipment. Dental company planned yesterday to come out, unhook everything, out of business at that point, right? Like zero things can happen in a dental office at that point, right? Today, moving truck was supposed to come pick everything up, carry it over to the new office and start installing. Well, I'm trying to think. I was there last Monday, was my last visit before I was back in Merle's Inlet again this Monday, because I left Wednesday to go out to the Koi Center. So I get a call on Monday from my equipment specialist. Again, thank you, Atlanta Dental. And thank you, Matt, for having my back all the time. But he goes by the site and he's like, guys, what's going on? There is no way I can bring equipment in here on Wednesday. You are not ready for me. And the guy says, well, I don't know. The project manager said, I don't know. Let me talk to my boss. So he calls up his boss and he says directly to my equipment specialist, Matt, he says, apparently the move-in date has been moved to next week. How much communication do you think there was regarding this between the project manager and myself? Zero. I still had a moving truck coming. I still had 0 patients scheduled on the schedule as of Monday. I
This is
still was
insane
expecting
to
to
me.
be in a new building
Yes.
as of the end of this week. So, we blocked off the rest of this week. Anyway, so that's been my world, has been reorganizing all of that move and having some, I call them Jersey sessions with my contractor, because it's really hard to hold the Jersey back when stuff like that happens. And I don't know, someone may show up dead. I don't know who it's going to be, but it could
As
get
in
ugly.
Yellowstone, it's time to go visit the train station.
Call your boys from Parsippany and get it taken
That's
care of.
exactly.
We're calling in some.
Need to talk to my Jersey boys again. But another weird thing happened to me, though. The end of last week, my office manager calls me and she says, there is this urgent call from the State Board of Dentistry. And, I keep asking them what it's about, whatever. They will not leave any message. They said it's an urgent matter. We need to talk to Dr. Horowitz, blah, 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 blah. So finally, they call again. She gives them my direct number because she's like, okay, this must really be important. So she gives them my direct cell number. I take the call while I'm out at Coy's, and it's a guy telling me how my license is in trouble. Somebody is doing illegal things with my DEA, and there's this big investigation, and they need to get some information from me. And I said, the State Board of Dentistry? Yeah. Which state? They said South Carolina. I said, who signed the order from the board? And because I know a lot of the people on the board. And of course, they couldn't name anybody. Oh, don't you care that your license is in trouble? Don't you care that that somebody is compromising? I'm like, okay. If the state board has business with me, they will send a certified letter. Unless you are willing to bring me a certified letter, this conversation is over. And by the way, I've recorded this so that I can share this with other people and let them know what you're doing. And anyway, that's a scam out there right now. So, of
I've
course,
heard that one before.
You've heard that one before?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I've not heard the dental licensure. I mean, you hear that you didn't report for jury duty, you haven't overpaid, parking ticket, then now you have a warrant out for your arrest, like that kind of stuff. But
yeah,
my parents actually got a call that I was in trouble with the sheriff.
My parents got a call that my son Joel was in Florida and in trouble. Call the grandparents, send bail money, and it was an AI generated voice.
Right.
Yeah. But this too, they're trying to get information from me, but they did, because it's public record, they did have my license number and NPI.
Yeah.
And tried to use that as if, obviously this had to be the state board, but when they couldn't name anybody on the state board, I was like, okay, you're done.
Yeah.
So 2 things. I've taken up all the intro. How are you guys doing?
Those were really good stories, though, so totally worth it.
Well, do either of you have anything going on?
I had an email go out to my office manager yesterday, and it was from me, and it was somebody who copied my LinkedIn profile and created a email return or a signature on the email. And I they asked me, they asked my office manager to call them back because they needed to discuss some things before the next payroll. And of course, there were no other, and there was no other information on there. But it just really pisses you off that somebody, and the way they read it, the way it read, the signature was, I mean, it looked like me, and it was just copied and pasted from my LinkedIn profile, which really pisses me off. And that's another reason I hate LinkedIn.
That's funny that you mentioned LinkedIn, because I got my first scam off of LinkedIn this week, where someone who found me on LinkedIn called my office to cold call me, but was using a lot of the information off of LinkedIn, and essentially convinced my front desk that somehow I knew them and we were friends.
Mhm.
And he was just calling to connect. And I said, "What was the name again? And what was the company?" And I looked it up and I was like, "Yeah, he just tried to friend request me on LinkedIn." And, I mean, come on.
Yeah. I know this never happens to you, Jennifer, and certainly not you, Chad, because you're not as good looking or as charismatic as I am. But apparently, my posts on Facebook, I am so attractive and so interesting that many Asian beautiful women see, and this is nothing, I mean, I don't mean to sound racist, but that's typically the area of the world where these come from. Beautiful, interesting, somewhat interesting women are just very interested in what I'm posting and what I think and how I look. And so well, at least they make me feel good about myself.
There
That's all
you go.
I
There you go.
Not just you, Jeff. I'm just letting you know.
say.
Hate to
You're
break
not
it to
the
you,
only
bud.
one.
I think
Yeah.
even I get them.
Oh,
Yeah.
do you?
Yeah.
Yeah. And my favorite is please send me a friend request. We could be friends because your life looks beautiful.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but they're all like fashion designers and stuff. And you know what? Believe it or not, we get those people asking to become members of Dentists in the Know too.
Oh, I know. I
Yeah.
shut down a lot.
Yeah.
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 A lot.
It
My
looked like
favorite
a
is
very interesting Conway River Fest this year.
yeah. Hey, folks, I don't mean to spoil the banter parade, but we do have a guest waiting, so maybe we should
Yes,
get
we
the
do.
news.
All right. We
Ready
should
to
Yeah.
let
get to the
Jennifer do
news?
some news. It's just good to see you guys.
We can banter again afterwards if you want to. I
We
mean,
can?
but Dr. Rand,
Maybe our guest would
Dr.
like to
Rand has been
banter
in front
with
of a
us.
mirror working on his hair for the past 15 minutes, so I
Yeah,
want to make sure that we
it's
get to him
starting
in
to
a
come
timely
in now.
manner. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I like where
Yeah.
it's
Go,
going.
boy.
All right. News.
Are we ready?
All right.
Okay, guys. So this was an interesting story, and it comes on the heels of a recent development. I've had another removable lab refuse to make a Nesbit appliance. I don't know if anybody else has experienced that, but they say, "Oh, we won't make you a Nesbit because somebody could choke or swallow." And I think, okay, well, these soft flex partials, like, they're pretty retentive. It would take a lot for it to just randomly lodge out. But either way, it's interesting that I had recently had this conversation with the dental lab, because a woman just died from swallowing her dental plate. Now, in the story, they don't disclose the size of the plate or how much, how big it was. Was it a full plate? I can't imagine that was the case. I'm imagining it was a flipper of some sort or a single tooth partial, but she swallowed it. Went to the hospital thinking that she had swallowed it. They took initial set of x-rays, couldn't find anything. She went home about a week later, was starting to have a lot of issues medically, reported back to the hospital. They went through a bunch of battery of testing, and needless to say, in the attempt to try to retrieve it, find it, locate it, she ended up having a cardiac event and passed away. And, obviously the family was awarded some compensation for this particular incident, but it brought to light the fact that under any x-ray system, the majority of partials, if they have no metal clasps, let's take a thermoplast or a flexible base partial, won't show up on a radiograph. So there are two sides to the coin for the judge. The first was back to the dental industry to say, is it time to consider some type of radiopaque marker, so that if we do have these ingestible events, can we find it? And on the inverse side, it was back to the clinicians in the hospital to say, you can't just rely on a single solitary imaging technology to think that it's going to bail you out or help you answer problems. You have to dig deeper. If the patient's reporting these issues or these symptoms, or in fact, she reported believing she had swallowed it, you can't just take a chest x-ray and say, well, we don't see it, so it must not be there. Is it an ultrasound technology? Is it an endoscopy? Is it something else to be able to locate it? And so it was kind of a two-sided coin to say we both can do better. And so I took that to heart to say, maybe it is time to at least consider some type of radiopaque marker, either in the denture teeth themselves, which I think some have now, or in the thermoplast partials, that if there is an event that does occur, that we would actually be able to locate it and retrieve it, which would be half of the battle. So very interesting. A lot of state news that's happening. We've had a lot of activity over the last year or so, a lot going on the state level of what medical loss ratio should look like in different states. The compact for universal licensure has certainly been a topic, which we'll talk about a little bit tonight as well. But this summer, these states have been super active, a lot of activity on the local level, redefining how practitioners are being compensated, medical loss ratio, universal licensure, and the whole gamut of insurance reform. In Pennsylvania, we saw that the governor signed a bill that he could not mandate a credit card payment for services. So insurance companies cannot require you to accept a credit card. I think that's fantastic because we all know that transaction also costs somewhere between 2.5% and 3%. So there's another deduction for the insurance company to pass along to the practitioners. Missouri also amended its credit card legislation and assignment benefits to make it stronger for their practitioners. Illinois also passed virtual credit card and prior authorization laws. Florida, Arizona, New Jersey, and Iowa also passed virtual credit card legislation. So there's a ton of momentum in ensuring that practitioners are being paid fairly for the services being rendered and not ultimately penalized in percentage points if they're forced to take certain types of payment. Maryland looked at prior authorization laws. Tennessee also did virtual credit card legislation, bundling and downcoding. Indiana was on the docket for assignment of benefits and third-party network leasing bills. Wisconsin also passed an assignment of benefits law. Louisiana, Virginia, and Rhode Island also passed laws requiring insurers to report dental loss ratio. What does this say? It's all coming on the heels of question 2 from Massachusetts. A ton of uptick of states relooking at their dental health acts in their state, looking at licensure, payment, portability, and making sure that insurance companies are accountable. A ton of reform is happening. A lot of states have medical loss ratio on their ballots for the fall. We'll get updated information on that in the coming weeks. But it's really cool, frankly, to see that states are taking up arms basically to protect practitioners, to ensure that it's a healthy relationship between patients, practitioners, and their insurance companies. And on the tail of that, our final story for tonight, it was the last state in the union, by far one of the most conservative licensure states that we have. It used to be North Carolina. North Carolina was one of only a few states about 15 years ago that still had their own licensure exam, and they would not accept any other regional exam. That number has dwindled over time, but Florida had remained true to their state licensure. They had not added themselves to any of the regional licensures, nor did they accept it. They had pathways to licensure in their state for providers in other states, but you still had to go through a licensure process, and it wasn't through reciprocity alone. There were exams and parts of the examination process that had to be completed for you to be eligible for licensure in their state. Well, that changed this week when Governor DeSantis moved forward with legislation that would open up universal licensure for Florida. So of all the states that I thought would sign the compact and be a part of the Portability Licensure Act, it was not Florida. I thought they might be one of the last ones to join, right along with North Carolina. But in fact, they have jumped on. I think part of it is the increase in population that they've seen over the last few years has left them very deficient in the areas of clinicians and other licensed professionals in their state. So this is a universal licensure, not just for dentistry, but it did impact their dental act, but in many other professional areas as well, to open the state up more for those individuals seeking to work and live in the state of Florida, but are professionally licensed in other states. We're going to break the law down. It's pretty complex. Actually, when they went back and reviewed it, it touches on many aspects of the Dental Act for Florida. A ton of things have been up for debate and negotiation in that particular bill. I'm quite amazed, actually, when I read it, how much they were able to get through in this particular legislative cycle. But it is an interesting update, and what I thought would be the last stand for licensure in the United States, Florida has now jumped on board with universal licensure. I think that now will set the tone for many other states to follow suit before too long. I think we're going to see a lot of portability opening up in the next few years. And with that, that's the news.
You know, the media needs an advocate, and I think you are just that person.
What am I advocating for?
Good news.
Yes, I like
Mhm.
good news.
I'm telling you, because the news these days is so damn. I mean, not that yours wasn't depressing, but it's so
I mean,
damn
it's always
depressing.
depressing. But
Yeah,
I
I'm
could have
telling you.
said, and another person died in a car
Yeah,
accident
yeah.
at I-10 and 40 West.
Yeah.
And then another person was shot in a home off of 1010 Road. And then there was a robbery at the grocery store at whatever.
The La Jolla man clings to life.
That was a great segment. Really enjoyed it.
Did you ever
But-
think you would see Florida break down their barrier?
Never.
Pretty impressive, though, and it just shows that the population probably needs a few more hands to handle the teeth down there.
Well, they
So,
cited Arizona, which is also suffering from a very similar, I guess suffering is the right word, but experiencing a very similar problem, that they've had such an influx of individuals moving to the state, primarily from California, that they don't have enough professionals to serve the patients. And so they saw an increase of 10,000 licensed professionals over a 5-year period. And again, not just dental, it's all areas of medicine, probably aesthetics, legal, like attorney. It's all the areas that one must have a professional licensure in order to practice. And so they've been able to bring professional services into the state that otherwise would have been a holdup based on licensing costs, et cetera. So
I'm just always worried about knee-jerk reactions. I
know.
I am that way because, you know, it's really hard to have any kind of quality control. And when it comes to public health, I think that has to be a part of it.
100%. 100%. I don't know what the right answer is, but I thought it was very interesting that Florida was ahead of many states, which historically has never been the case. So
I agree. Well, we kept our guest waiting. So, Chad, would you like to introduce our guest?
yeah, and my dad always said I couldn't walk and chew gum, and so I'm going to tell you, I'm going to talk, and you're going to chew gum. Can you bring our guest up while I go ahead and introduce him?
But I need my.
I am really excited to introduce our guest, and it's not because of everything on his bio, which was pretty fantastic, but there's a lot of things I saw in his bio that were really interesting. But it's the last thing that I'm going to tell you that made me so excited to bring him on, okay? Our guest, Dr. Elliot Rand, graduated from Howard in 1987. He started a private practice in January of 1990 and currently has a staff of 40 employees and docs. He had always understood the concept of referring to specialists, and he saw the need quickly to create a space where everybody could be seen under one roof. I absolutely love that. And so in 1993, he started hiring specialists to work under his roof, and he has built a thriving practice. He's had an active oral surgery and ortho program for over 25 years, an active pediatric program for nearly 20 years, a prosthodontist for over 10 years, and he's served his community and beyond for nearly 35 years. One of the things that caught my eye in here is that he's attended and lectured for Dr. Glazer at Smiles in the Sun, Longboat Key, Florida. Dr. Horowitz did that last year, and Dr. Bell and I are doing that this year.
Oh,
He's an avid photographer of wildlife and underwater photography. What he's here for tonight is to talk about Pearl, what it's done for his practice. But he's traveled to a bunch of countries and everything, seen, 40 countries, 7 continents, bipolar plunges from the Arctic and Antarctica, polar bears, mountain gorillas, humpback whales. But this is what gets me the most, because it tells me that my son can thrive in this world is he has an enormous collection of Legos. And I will tell you, I've got to tell you this because you may not appreciate this like my son does, but my son builds Legos every time he's home. It's like it's his quiet time. He buys these expensive Lego sets. So every morning I take the dogs on a walk and I picked up their duty in a little bag and I tie the bag off and everything. And so my joke is every time I walk in, there's a Lego set. I put the bag somewhere in the Lego set, take a picture of it, and it pisses him off, but I love doing it. So anyhow, there you go.
Wow. Well, that's amazing. That's funny because actually behind me on the table is a Lego set being built of a Porsche.
There you go.
Yeah, it's a hobby. It's a passion. It's a challenge. It's great for the mind. And I think as dentists, we're good with our hands and our mind, and it's just easy peasy, just kind of put things together. So that's the next build that's being built out there is the Porsche. And it's a little bit of a challenge, but knocking it out. So I'll show you guys in a bit what's going on there. It's pretty messy, so we'll maybe wait to the end of the show.
Well, I think there's something to be said because if you look into, the science of Legos and stuff, and the people that carry it throughout their life are supposedly very smart. So there you go. My son, sometimes I question that, but you've been around a little bit longer than he has, and you've proven to me that might be the case. So thank you. You've eased my mind this evening. So.
Well, anytime he wants to come down to my Lego store downstairs, my wife is like annoyed with me because she's like, it's enough with the Legos and buying it, putting them away. But I say, I just enjoy building it, put it in the office sometimes. They're downstairs and it's my little toy room. So it's a lot of fun. It's my cave down there. So it's a lot of fun.
No freezers down there, right?
No, there's a lot of wine bottles down there, though. That's for sure. So that's
okay.
It always makes it a lot easier just to kind of pop open a box and pop open a bottle and sit there. And
nice, I love it.
I like that attitude there too. I think I can do that.
I don't accomplish much when I open the bottle, but it's still a lot of fun. But I want to tell you guys, that segue and that amazing intro was simply amazing, and I wanted to just touch a little bit about this IT world of what's going on. And before I get into Pearl, about these hacks, and you guys have mentioned these hacks, and even the simplest hack of where they send and copy Bank of America, the M in America can look like an N and an R when it's typed out. And your eyes are not looking at that, but you see the logo, you see the whole thing that looks professional and yada, yada, yada. Something wrong with your account, contact us, whatever, bam, they're in. So the latest and greatest that we all go through daily, and I think it's so important for dentists to have in their practice is, and don't interpret the initials the wrong way, MFA, but you got to have a multi-factor authentication so that this way, if they're opening up something that requires that authenticator, there's got to be a way to make sure that you're unlocking that for a reason. And if they're not doing that, or practice or not implementing that, you're taking a risk. You're taking a risk in this IT challenge world that we live in. And it gets complicated every day. They're a lot smarter than us, and we got to keep moving that needle to keep trying to figure out ways to protect ourselves and having that hack. Super important.
I saw something the other day. It's interesting that you say that, and I don't know if it was Bank of America, but it was a letter from a corporation that looked very authentic, and the M was a Russian M versus an English M.
Yeah. Wow.
And it was just like your eyes completely pass over it.
You'll
and
never
it
see
can
it.
happen. It can
You'll
happen
never see it.
to anybody,
Yeah. So that's that's just something amazing. Well, anyhow, how you doing? I'm here in Jersey, Northwest Jersey.
My old stomping ground.
I know, Montclair. You told me about that. It's been hot, but it's been beautiful weather. Born and raised in Philly, born in Philly, raised in Jersey, And like you said, in 1990, I started Rand Dental. Always had a vision about building a practice where I would bring in specialists and GPs that were doing things that I wasn't doing. And I had that vision in 1993. Out of school in 1987, I didn't know anything from my ass to my elbow. But I took that chance because every time I was referring somebody for ortho or OS, I waited a whole year to get a fruit platter or a cookie platter. And I was like, what value does that really bring me except helping the patient? He sent me some fruit. You know, occasionally you'll take me out to a restaurant, but I didn't see the value. So unbeknownst to me, as I was building like a mini DSO within my practice, it just exploded over time. So that's me in a nutshell, what I done, you know, with dentistry. But how I brought it in.
Dr. Rand, before you go on one more step, I think what everybody out there needs to know, raised in Philly, working in Jersey, Giants or Eagles?
Cowboys.
You know this is recorded, right?
I found a spirit animal.
I was born in Philly, so as a New York, New Jersey guy, you know, Philly is just not for me. Although my wife is a Pittsburgh Penguin fan and I'm a Ranger fan.
I'm with her there. I went to school.
You know, so when we first got married, it was like Civil War going on in here when they played each other. I said, listen, it's our marriage or it's hockey. You better make the right choice because I think that hockey doesn't have the value that we can have together. So now it's calm and cool after many years, but it was like, it was a journey.
I thought you were going to tell us about your second wife.
No. So Anastasia loves the Penguins. So, you know, I've had to kind of support her in their journey. And I do. She'll support the Rangers in my journey when they go on to the playoffs. So it's all good now. It's all good.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I mean, this is what the minds want to know out there for real. So.
Well, the only reason with the Cowboys was because when I was a kid, the Cowboys were up for sale, and I'm the oldest of 5 siblings, and my brothers and I had a pipe dream. We can buy the Cowboys.
No.
We were kids, right? And we wanted to know more about those Dallas Cowgirls. So we were like, we never pulled it off, but we stayed with the Cowboys, and it was kind of hot back then. We were playing the Pittsburgh Steelers, so those were the days, and just kind of. I like them. I like the Giants too. So it goes. It's messed up.
Well, I apologize to digress there, but I just had to ask.
Well, I could take the Cowboys and the Giants over the Eagles any day. So there you go.
God, please, any Philadelphia team. But those that are down in Philly and listening to this, you know, I still love you guys, and I always take that to heart. But I won't wear my Ranger jacket down there because I think I could take my life in my hands. But anyhow, I know you guys invited me to talk about AI, and predominantly I want to talk about that with, you know, the implementation of Pearl and how and why Pearl, since coming into my practice early in 2023, has changed my practice dramatically, and also with the implementation of using dental intel. And, you know, I don't care where or how you gain your metrics, but it's important for all dentists to really have a handle and know your metrics. And there's simply no other way to get around how are you doing as a business, how's your team performing, and where and how you can do better. So in that journey, you know, when I was looking at AI and I was debating between Pearl and another company, Overjet, I was just trying to figure out which would serve my practice better.
Hey, Dr. Rand, let me just interrupt you really quickly to ask you one question. If you would just do this for our audience, for people who will be listening in the future on podcast, would you describe the technology that you're talking about when you talk about Pearl or Overjet or these types of companies?
Absolutely. So I started to look for a company that was looking at AI and using analogies to look at your x-rays and now, you know, to look at an x-ray, analyze the x-rays so that you can show a patient better how decay looks. Because when we as dentists pull up a digital film, it's gray. They're seeing gray, maybe a little hue of black, white. They can't tell in incipient caries. They can't tell caries. They can't tell. They have to trust your word for the situation. Because there's probably 600 shades of gray, and we can only see maybe 60 to 90 shades of gray. So as Chad puts on his glasses, I'm the same way. I'm looking at x-rays and like, I may miss a lesion here and there. So the AI now will spot the incipient lesions, the carious lesions, radiolucencies, calculus, and we can talk about that stuff, open margins, and that is simply unreplaceable because the value in that really tells us what and how we can serve the patient better. Because as a leader, your job as a leader is to bring value to your team so they can multiply value to others. That's the simple thing. So using that AI really helps in that technology. So when my hygienist will do an FMX or bite wings, and we pull up that AI with that X-ray in front of them, we can colorize that picture with Pearl. And we colorize the enamel, we colorize the dentin, and then the nerve. So when I tell patients, look, that cavity has now passed the concrete, the hardest part of our body, enamel. It's gone into the sand and it's digging away. And when you put that mouse over that carious lesion in Pearl, it shows you the percentage of that carious lesion that has infected the dentin. And then once it keeps marching on, you tell a patient once it gets to that nerve room, they have problems, they're going to need a root canal. So more patients are not only believing you, but they're seeing how bad or what's involved with that too. So in the general dentistry world, it's huge. When we talk about perio, it helps measures, it will measure from every CEJ to the height of the bone, the depth of the pocket on the mesial and distal side of the tooth. So when it does that and it gives you 2.0 or greater from the CEJ to the bone, you're already starting to detect perio disease. And we all know about perio disease, right? Dementia, diabetes, hypertension, things like that. So when you want to dial that down to a patient, they can really understand how bad it is. And it marks it yellow, red when things are really bad. Because imagine that insurance companies get thousands of requests daily with FMXs for SRP. They're not sitting there with a GP guy looking up at SRPs and an FMX all day long and yay and nay, yay and nay. That's all going through AI. Every major carrier is using AI to detect caries and periodontal disease. They all are. And the sooner we start using it, it helps us support our case so that when they reject it, we can appeal the situation to the patient, not just with clinical notes, but understanding the AI. The bigger question is what happens when AI is fighting AI, which AI wins? But in the meantime, we want to keep at least putting that out there so patients can understand that. So Pearl has been able to show my providers and hygienists ways to communicate patients as to why they need the dentistry. It's not about the how, because all day long, you and I could sit there and prep a tooth with our eyes closed, right? And just do the thing. It's the how that they're not interested, but it's the why. Once they start understanding that, 40% of your tooth is filled there. 55% of your tooth is filled, and you've had that molar since you've been 6, and it's been filled since you were a teenager. Do the math. It can fracture next week. You can fracture anytime. But at least then you're trying to be preventative. So you're sending in your pre-D, and you're doing your situation based on that information. And the patient agrees to that. And by agreeing to that, your patient treatment acceptance percentage, getting them scheduled, will start to change and grow. So for example, I ran some benchmark numbers because I wanted to see how are we doing year to date and how do we do in 2023. So in 2023, my practice, when I just came on with the AI Pearl in March of 2023, I finished the year at 37% on treatment acceptance. Do you guys know what the national average is?
It's higher than 37, isn't it?
73?
No, 35.
35.
Wow.
35. Actually, on this paper, it's currently now 35. Back in 2023, it was 39%. The top 10% of practices are doing 58%. So 35% of your patients are saying yes to treatment. So currently, we're at 44%. So we've grown 7-8% in a matter of a year. That's huge. And that reflects also in the PPV, production per visit, just for my GPs. We were at 460. We're now at 520 per visit. The average is 460. So we were right on the average last year, and the top 10% are doing 650. So it's a slow growth because it's, implementing those things and showing patients and teaching. But a picture's worth 1,000 words. That's how things start to grow in your practice. But one of the biggest things I'm super proud about in my practice is the perio percentage. And that measures in dental intel, your 4341s, your 4342s, Arrestin, things like that, 4910, that perio journey. And that sometimes seems to be the hardest thing to sometimes dial down to patients. I don't feel like I got gum disease. My gums don't hurt me. But when you start showing them x-rays and you start getting these approvals and you show them we need to treat now this affected area with antibiotics and root planing and scaling, in January of 2023, my practice was at 7% in perio, detecting perio in anybody over the age of 30. I'm now 14% projected to go to 18% year end. It's massive. I mean, not only does it affect your bottom line as business people, but it also just shows how your team is becoming more of a facilitator in connecting patients. And that's what we talk about, momentum, moving the needle with the team.
Do you think it gives confidence to clinicians? I know as a provider, even I'll look at an x-ray, I'll look at another angle of an x-ray. Like you go back and forth going, do I really see what I think I see? And there's multiple factors. One, is it the first lesion on a patient who's never had a cavity before and you're about to have a really hard conversation? Is it just a weird presentation, not historically what you would expect? But then young providers or even hygienists, I would imagine too, do you see an improvement in their level of confidence? Like, is it somebody in the back of the room going, yes, you're right, you've got this, like you should be empowered to have the conversation?
Yeah, I love that question. I absolutely think it does, because I know personally, before AI came around, before I was really using digital, I was constantly maybe telling patients, let's watch the tooth, right? Now it's language, let's treat. This is why we need to treat. And then you got to get out of that modality. Yeah, if it's incipient, I'll be fine with watching tooth all day long, floss. We can measure that incipient lesion. Now, the AI, I'll tell you, it's not 100%, right? And you can mark that x-ray on Pearl and say, you know what, I'm not detecting that situation. And you could click off on different boxes and, the incipient caries or carious lesions. And that will just kind of flicker back and forth, and you can focus on that and show the contrast more and really look at it a little bit more. Because obviously, as the clinician, we're going to make that decision ultimately. But I think it really opens our eyes to the possibility of missing areas and missing lesions. And that's really the key, because we're human. I've missed lesions, right? So, I would hate to miss a DO and a year later come back and that DO is almost like, going to be an RCT post and core and crown. I'm like, how am I going to talk my way out of this situation? Right. So, we've all been there and it's like, oh my God, what did my associates? So you really want to, the young associates, some of them are more proactive in understanding that. You work with them to teach them the why and how to connect with the patients. And some of them are still uncertain, and I think it helps them to get a little bit more certainty in that value of knowing, hey, let's treat this now. This needs to be treated. And, how can I get you on the schedule? How can we move forward in that situation?
Well, especially in fairness, like many private practices, the clinicians running from a surgical procedure to doing a hygiene check back into a surgical procedure and forced to clear their mind and also become two very different people. The surgical dentist is not the same as the diagnostic, touchy-feely, conversational, like all present, all knowing, all being diagnostician. And so when you're having to like flip a switch constantly between being that person and the other, I can definitely see where technology would help you sort of refocus back in and say, check step, agree, don't agree, whatever, moving on, creating a treatment plan, doing the touchy-feely stuff without having to spend so much intellectual time on the actual review of radiographs. Being able to have that support system is huge.
I totally agree with you. But what becomes even huger in that story is the hygienists now are doing more of that proactive work for you before you walk in the room. Because before the AI came around and they would look at a thing, they're like, oh, you know, doc, can you check number 19? They're telling me because they're maybe seeing that DO there, right? But if they're bringing that A up and they're putting it on the other screen, they're blowing it all up and they're showing this, they've already set the patient up to saying, let me show you what we're using in the office. Look at the great technology that we're using to detect your cavities in your mouth. And this is showing a cavity. And I show you when I click on and off of it and the colors. This is what I'm going to show to the doctor. And that, you know, that just facilitates the way for you to move forward in your treatment.
This, I think what you just said is so powerful because, you know, one of the things that I've always stressed is I never want a patient to hear something only once in the experience, right? They should never hear about a problem only once during that patient experience. And so before we had this technology, the hygienists were intimidated because they're told through their career, well, I'm not allowed to diagnose. So all I can say is, well, I don't know. Let me ask the doctor about this. And there is absolutely nothing definitive about that to the patient. Then the doctor walks in and he looks at the x-ray. Yeah, I think that's a cavity. Okay. Well, they've heard that from one person. When the hygienist has AI backing them up and they can say, okay, I think we have a problem here. Oh, by the way, we have this new technology. This technology has confirmed, and this is from thousands and thousands and thousands of data points where it's learned to find these things. This agrees with it, but let's make sure. I mean, now it's just let's have Dr. Rand come in and make sure that he agrees with this. Not let's ask Dr. Rand if he wants to make some money.
Yeah,
I just
exactly.
so different.
I think Dr. Rand, I love what you said as well, because we've been using Pearl in our practice for the past couple of years. And, you know, I love hearing the hygienist going through the radiographs with the patient and saying, this is something that I want Dr. Duplantis or Dr. Kirkham to take a look at. And so in our practice, we do it a little bit differently. The colors don't come on until I go in there. And that actually works a little bit better because it becomes an educational tool. But I think what happens more so than anything is that you have the chance to be this huge hero on both sides, in that they lay the groundwork for you. They've prepped the patient. The patient's looking at the x-rays going, oh my gosh, because you and I both know that on almost every set of radiographs, there's going to be pink that shows up on it. Every set of radiographs. And, you know, you get to be the hero and say, you know what? This is an incipient lesion because it hasn't gone through the enamel. And this is something that I'm going to elect not to treat right now, but it's something that we both need to be aware of. So I would say our education, our prevention has gone through the roof, you know, and I would also say that our treatment has increased as well. And it's the things that make you go, you know, and there's things that you get in there and you're like, oh my gosh, I would have never imagined that this was as blown up as it was based upon the unaltered, or the unread, I should say, not altered, nothing's altered, but on the uninterpreted radiograph. It's been a beautiful addition to our practice as well.
Yeah, I love it. And I love what you said. And I think that's great because, you know, I just recently started implementing and teaching my staff my hand journey. And this is great. You know, it goes back to dental intel, but it's a hand journey. Okay. The first thing that we were all looking at was looking at our diagnostic percentage code. You know, what are we diagnosing on a daily basis, whatever that may be, right? The next code is patient acceptance, right? They're saying, okay, doc, I understand. I see the pearl. I see the connectivity. I understand I got a problem, right? Your treatment acceptance is the third thing. Them getting scheduled at the front desk and saying, yes, Dr. Rand needs to fix this. When can I schedule? What works out best? Those are three things that we can measure on a daily basis, whether it's Intel or whatever programs you may be using. But there's two other things on your hand that we don't see, but we can understand. The fourth thing is called care. So when we have diagnosis and patient says yes, and we get them scheduled and we treat, and care is up here, front desk, assistant, you, everything's great. Well, look at your thumb. Reputation, thumbs up. 5-star. I'm a 1,000 plus Google 4.7 practice, right? 5-star right here. But if you have all these wonderful things, your diagnosis, your patient says yes, treatment, scheduled the patient, right? And the care was like somewhere down in here, or your care was great and they were checked out and like something went wrong at the front desk. And then that reputation of your thumb, which is the most flexible finger, goes like this: 1-star, thumbs down, right? Doctor was great, system was great, loved the feeling. Front desk rude. We've all like seen something like that, and we want to like shoot ourselves in the head and go, "What did you do? What happened?" Like, so it's so important that that piece of Pearl, everything fits together for a reason of how you make that journey, and it's all about that journey with you and the patients, and continue to build that journey. I do believe we can never make 100% of our patients right. Sometimes my worst patient could be your best patient and vice versa. And we could trade all day long. But, as long as we're still staying consistent, giving them that technology and understanding the how and the why, and using that Pearl, you'll be able to succeed. And that's what it's about. My favorite word that I teach all my staff is how. How can I get you on the schedule? How will you be making that payment? It's not about would you like to make that payment. So it's, again, how do you understand the dentistry that I'm showing you today? Do you have any questions? And leaving that picture up there when you're talking, it just saturates their brain and it moves it forward. The same thing when I tell my staff, listen, when you're going to do a 4336, I think it is, or something for perio-inflammation, take a picture of that schmutz. Put that up on the screen, and I don't care, go in the back and fake it like you're doing an instrument. But let that sit on that screen there for 5 minutes. When you come back, and you're going to see the patient say, is that my mouth? Oh, yeah, I just was looking at the artificial intelligence also at your advanced gum disease. But yeah, that's in your mouth. And, and you rock and roll and you start treating, arresting, whatever it may be. So there's no reason that people should hold back. And I'm sure that Pearl is coming down with more abilities for us to see a lot more stuff that's out there. But between the calculus, the open margins, the decay, it's an invaluable tool, and everybody should have that practice in their own practice.
Dr. Rand, you've lectured, we've all lectured, and I think that one of the pushbacks that we get is, I can't stand it when I hear this, because I know people that thrive in this environment, but I hear it all the time. My practice is entirely insurance driven. And I just sit there for a second, and part of me says, well, the majority of ours are, to a certain extent. It doesn't mean that you're HMO, DMO, PPO, OPP, whatever. I mean, it's just that you've got, we all have to abide by what the insurance says. But to those people who are truly just purely insurance driven practices, if someone says that to you and you're talking about Pearl AI, what is your response?
It's simple. How do you drive the bottom line? How do you drive your production per visit? How do you drive care to the patients? How do you make sure that, when you took that Hippocratic oath, that you're not missing decay, you're not missing iridiolucency, you're not missing an issue, you're not missing perio. And if you're not using something to help you co-diagnose and no one else is in the room, you're running around like a bandit all day, doing things in one room, hopping to another room. If you're not using another tool to kind of help you preemptively before you walk in that room, you're losing out. To make that monthly payment, whatever it may be, $300-400, it's nothing. We all can piss away money, $300-400 in a heartbeat. Believe me, it's no big deal. But when you can use something that can make you grow, internally, and for your patients to grow and to talk about that when they go to the diner and these people are together and like, hey, my dentist just sent me some pictures of my teeth with the artificial intelligence. You can email to patients like that. It speaks volumes. There's no reason to not have that. I don't care if you're in. I'm a PPO practice and fee for service combination, but it's irrelevant. And then not knowing that the insurance companies are using this in their upper hand over you, then why aren't you using it then? We all know it's a game out there, and we're just so small in the pie. The patients are like this, and the insurance companies are like this. And who's the ones that are getting squished? We always are the ones getting squished.
So I think that there's something that needs to be mentioned, and you alluded to this early. You actually used this word at one point, and I don't want this to be lost on our audience. and that is calibration. So when you have a practice the size of your practice, and there's a reason too that so many PPOs have invested in this technology. Let me tell you, if you're wondering whether you should invest as an individual private practice owner, if you're wondering whether it's smart to invest in technology, watch what the PPOs are doing, because they're not just pissing the money away.
No.
They're gonna buy stuff that gets
Yeah.
return on their investment.
Absolutely.
So what they've learned is that this is a great way to calibrate a vast number of clinicians and say, hey, here's how we all need to be looking at this. It doesn't mean we're going to have 100% agreement on the final diagnosis, but it does bring everybody closer to being standardized. And I think that's important for a practice like yours. I think it's important for multiple location practices as well.
Absolutely, because those multiple locations or practices like mine, you get to dial down with individual providers, from the hygienists to the docs, and if you're not seeing numbers that you should be hopefully seeing, it's not a tool between Pearl and other intelligence that you're using just to go after the provider and say what's going on. It's kind of work with them as to explain to them how the why and how do we present to patients, because they may not have those tools. They went to dental school just like you and I. And believe me, I've run across dentists all the time that have worked for me, and they got great hands, but they got no brain and mouth to kind of like explain the treatment so that we get the patient in that care value of kind of running the whole situation. And that'll affect you in that whole situation, because if they can't recommend the dentistry and say, well, yeah, you got a DO on 19, the patient ain't gonna know what the heck you're talking about. And it doesn't matter to me if you're gonna do the most beautiful carved composite in the world. That's great. But what do I do with the rest of the schedule when I can't fill you because you don't understand how we help the patients in that care? So
I have one last question as we
Go
get
for it.
close to closing. How have your patients received the technology? Are they skeptical of it? Are they embracing it? Is there a little bit of both? And how are clinicians navigating those conversations?
Authentically, I think my patients have been blown away by it completely. They just love seeing it and understanding what's going on now in their mouth a lot better than before. So there's been nothing but positive feedback from patients. My staff tells me that patients are loving that situation. It's on our website as well. So we demo it there. And there's like a little Pearl video that patients can watch. We have it in the waiting room as well. So there's definitely zero pushback and understanding that. And it really has just helped them understand their dentistry and their need for treating those kind of situations. So it's a beautiful thing. No pushback on that whatsoever, Jennifer.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I have as we close, because we're I don't want to keep everybody over. I could talk about this for hours. I think you and I are on the same page with AI. I have a selfish ask for you, because with the amount of employees that you have and the team that you've built and the practice that you have, you alluded to a lot of things that I think piqued a lot of interest. And the interest that I think you piqued is definitely with AI, but you also piqued some interest on KPIs.
Oh,
And I think that you
sure.
kind of know this, and I think we could have stopped and broken that down. So what my selfish ask is, would you be willing to do a podcast with us, either if it's on a night or we'll record something where we talk about KPIs and how you kind of measure your practice?
I'd love to. I love KPIs, and I think it's so important. I'm not in the chair anymore. I used to be in the chair for many, many years. So it gives me a different perspective to help work with KPIs. But, when I went to dental school like you guys, I learned the basics of dentistry, and then I started doing dentistry. But I always knew that the care had to be there to kind of get word of mouth to spread and build the practice. But really what I've understood in the last few years, and one of my greatest mentors is John Maxwell. John Maxwell's leadership. And that guy is just brilliant. And I listen to him sometimes in different little things and podcasts. And that really just helps me to work better with the team, because we didn't learn that in school. And nobody said to me, hey, Elliot, in 1987, when you're going to graduate, You're gonna have this practice, and good luck with all that stuff. And it's just gonna fall out of the sky. You're gonna have 15 ops. So it's been a journey, and it's constantly learning and working with teammates. But KPIs, man, I could talk about KPIs all day long, and I love that kind of stuff. And how to dial down on that stuff, I think, is super important, and that really will change your whole dimension. And getting to work with companies to renegotiate your insurance fees, and understanding and getting an Excel spreadsheet, which have your most annual patient value and then which carriers don't, and saying, you know what, adios. Delta Dental, adios. I haven't said goodbye to Delta Dental because one of my local providers did. So I'm on the fence with that. But yeah, we've dropped some carriers because, they won't negotiate and they don't have the annual patient value. So I'm like, it doesn't work out. Sorry, you're dragging me down.
I think that was a yes, folks.
I think we heard it.
Well, and what's even better, talking KPIs with the dentist who can tell you what you should be watching and how you can actually improve it.
No doubt.
Nothing's worse than having a consultant saying you're not hitting all these KPIs and metrics, and you're like, okay, how do I fix it? And they're like, I don't really know. Like, you need to do more of it.
Consultants are good, but if I'm thinking dental and I'm in the box, I'm there to share it with you guys.
That's right.
It's no great secret. I love to share it.
That's not a knock on consultants. It's just, in my experience, like if you're not a dentist, you don't actually know what it takes to convert treatment, the conversations and how you move the needle.
True.
So having a dentist understanding KPIs and then helping other dentists is completely invaluable.
Well, and Chad, I'm going to throw a correction out before you close us out. I just realized I finished that little rant because I was like so on my soapbox about what DSOs are doing. And I thought afterwards, I said PPOs, not DSOs.
Well,
so I just want to put that correction out there that if you want to know if you should invest in technology, watch what the DSOs are investing.
Sure.
So anyway, with that, I'll say thank you, Dr. Rand, and Chad, please close us out.
Well, I have a lot of mentors in dentistry, and I think Dr. Rand and I fire on very similar cylinders because there were a lot of things that he said that I agree with. I've had AI in my practice for a couple of years now, and it's been just a wonderful addition. But one of my mentors is a lady by the name of Carrie Weber, and she has this wonderful slide on communication. And if you look at AI and Pearl for what they do, they are a great communication tool, and it creates a number of things. And those are need, understanding, trust, loyalty, and value in no particular order. But AI and Pearl do all of that. And, the more tools that we share with our patients, the more trustworthy we become and the value they perceive, and therefore they want to proceed with their treatment. So it's a wonderful communication and educational tool. And I couldn't do without it in my practice. And it doesn't sound like Dr. Rand could either. So for those of you that are truly an insurance driven practice, I want you to take off your, I can't, buy this because it costs X dollars hat for right now, and say, I need to buy this because it's going to create X dollars, X value, X need, X loyalty, X trust. And it's going to build my case acceptance rate within my practice. So Dr. Rand, thank you so much for being here. It was a wonderful, wonderful show.
Thank you.
Great talk. Thank you.
And as we close,
I need to start a support group for thumbs that don't bend.
Yeah.
I can't actually do the 5 thumb down. Like this is the most straight thumb you'll ever find in your whole life. I've lost every thumb I've ever. I have no thumbs down. 0.
Well, that's good. I like that.
It's an optimistic outlook on life, but a terrible thumb wars person. And so anyone else suffering from the same condition, we'll start a support group after this, and we'll come up with our own algorithm.
Well, on that note, one of my classmates in dental school was from Michigan, right? And I'm like, a young 20-year-old going into dental school, and she said, I'm from Michigan. I'm like, okay, where? And she went like this, okay.
Saginaw. Yeah. Saginaw, Michigan. Yeah.
I'm like, what the hell is that?
What does that mean?
It's like, this is how Michigan's shaped, this is whatever. So every time I always see that, I'm like,
it's the what exit of Michigan.
That is Saginaw, Michigan. My buddy Jack Nash taught me that.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny?
As we close,
that's New Jersey. What exit?
Yeah.
We have a birthday to celebrate this week, and I'm sorry, Jeff. It's not yours, buddy. but we have a birthday to celebrate.
Peaches?
Jeff's pig Peaches. It's her 10th birthday. And
Damn it, she made it another year.
We want to celebrate Peaches' birthday.
Damn it.
So for those of you watching, this is
Jeff,
Jeff's beloved Peaches that we're just going to put on repeat as we close this show. Good night, everybody.
Beautiful. Good night.
And that wraps up another podcast for Dentists in the Know. On behalf of Dr. Jennifer Bell, Dr. Chad Duplantis, and myself, remember that we've got a great profession, so let's make it a great day, Dinks.